The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good afternoon or morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jordan Summers. I am the program manager for Reaching Out MBA. This is our Veterans Day webinar featuring some of our LGBTQ MBA vets. Just some few housekeeping details. I'm going to go through the attendees list and unmute you. And then you will need to mute yourself on your side. This will help us keep the feedback down. If you have any questions for our moderator or panelists at any time, we ask that you put them in the little questions chat, the questions box or the chat. It doesn't really matter. We have a full hour planned and a lot of great topics to get talking about. So with that, we'll give people just a few more minutes to get started, and I'll go ahead and unmute you all. Great. So everyone should now be able to mute from either their side of their device, and we'll ask everyone to do that just to keep the feedback down. All right, we did have a few new people jump in. So once again, just to reiterate, I'm going to unmute you from my side, and then if you can go ahead and mute from your device, that will help us keep the feedback and background noise down. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. As I said before, my name is Jordan Summers. I'm the program manager for Reaching Out. On the staff side, we also have Matt Cotty, who is our director of development. And then we have our lovely moderator and panelists, who I will allow to introduce themselves. But we wanted to say thank you, first of all, for joining us for this webinar. We try and do something like this every year to, first of all, honor our veterans and those still in service, and also just to get some perspective about what it's like to have the identity of a veteran and also an LGBTQ MBA. So with that, I will introduce you to our moderator, who is Andy Blevins. He's a veteran of the U.S. Navy and works for Outserve, which I'll tell you more about, and is currently getting his MBA at Willamette University. And Andy, I'll let you go ahead and tell the attendees a little bit more about yourself and then introduce the panelists.
Great, thanks, Jordan. I'm really happy to be here with all these great panelists. So quick introduction of myself. My pronouns are he, him, his. And as Jordan said, I'm a JD MBA candidate at Willamette University's Atkinson Graduate School of Management and College of Law. I feel fortunate to work as the legal and policy manager at Outserve, which I'll talk about a bit more later. And prior to joining Outserve, I worked at the White House under the Obama administration and served as a cryptologic technician in the Navy. So I'm joined today by four incredible individuals, each of whom wore the cloth of this country at one point in their lives, and are now enrolled in business school preparing to tackle the next great chapter of their life. So please join me in welcoming Rhett Chase, she, her, an Air Force veteran and MBA candidate at the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University. Can we remember to mute our mics, please? We have Rob Versailles, he, him, an Air Force veteran studying at Fuqua, I don't know if I'm saying that right, I apologize, School of Business at Duke University. Mark Mosby, he, him, who is an Air Force veteran studying at the Columbia Business School. And David Reyes, he, him, who is an Army veteran studying at the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas, Austin. So to start the discussion, I'd really like to give the panelists an opportunity to share a bit more about themselves. Panelists, could you perhaps give us like a 2-minute nutshell version of who you are? Possibly consider including things like what you did in the service, your area of concentration in business school, and your least favorite tour of duty. Rhett, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and then I commissioned as an officer into contracting. So that just means like negotiating contracts, kind of like the business side of the Air Force, where my first tour of duty was in Hawaii. It was a hard duty, but someone had to do it. And then I went to Los Angeles, where I worked in contracting as well. So I guess my least favorite, I can't really choose one because they're all pretty great. I did go to Afghanistan once and deployed there. And so that's about it. I think I covered all your things.
Perfect. Rob, did you want to go next?
Yes, I'm Rob Versailles. I was enlisted in the Air Force. I grew up in Colorado Springs, so the Air Force was a natural fit. I worked with the Red Horse Squadron. I would say my least favorite tour would be anything that involved significant amounts of training, especially boot camp. And with regards to what I've done since then, I served 07 to 09 when I was medically discharged. So I was under don't ask, don't tell. Have worked in tech post bachelor's, leading up to my MBA.
That's great. Mark.
Yeah, hello everyone. Mark Mosby here. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I graduated from the United States Air Force Academy back in 2011. I served 6 years on active duty. I've had a diverse career in the military. I started off as a diversity recruiter for my alma mater at the Air Force Academy. Did that for 1 year. I spent about 3 years doing acquisition program management at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And after that, I spent the past 2 years working as an Air Force ROTC instructor at LSU. I would say my least favorite of those assignments was at the Air Force Academy, since it was right there and I was working for my alma mater. If I had to pick one that was my least favorite, that would be it. I'm studying finance as part of my MBA program at Columbia, and I'm looking to pursue a career in investment banking.
That's great. And David?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is David Reyes. I'm originally from South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, and I went to West Point, graduated there in 2009, and commissioned as an engineer officer. I was first assigned to Stryker Brigade out of Fort Lewis, Washington, and I served there as a platoon leader, an executive officer before going back to West Point as well and serving as an admissions officer for a year. Did that and then went on to serve with the 249th Engineer Battalion out of Washington, D.C., doing emergency operations for them. And I actually got out in 2015 and did a couple of years in the private sector. I worked for Deloitte Consulting for in crisis management and also for a tech startup as well. And I'm currently at McCombs School of Business and focusing on, I'm looking to switch into brand management, brand and product management after business school.
That's wonderful. So I'd love to broaden our discussion a bit more to your experiences serving in the military as a member of the LGBTQ community. For those of you that served both under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and after its repeal, perhaps you can give a bit of perspective on how the experience changed. Rob, would you like to start us off?
Sure. As I mentioned, I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and to be perfectly honest, I wasn't out at that point, even outside of the military, but one thing that I have noticed is the support I have from veterans more recently in MBA circles has definitely been there. I've not been afraid to talk about it, even with my fellow airmen that I serve with, and it's not really been a issue that's come to a head in my life.
It's great to hear that you have that support system now. David, would you like to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. At West Point, I mean, we had a very close group of friends, and definitely this was before, under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but we definitely supported each other through that point in life. And I went back to West Point actually maybe a year, about 6 months after President Obama repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And it was really just the amount of support I think that I received from my peers and also from my commanders at West Point, and then throughout the rest of my career in the military, for me and my partner was just extremely, it really helped me, I think, just become a better leader overall and really support the greater community in the military. So it was, I think, initially it was difficult maybe coming out, but it was also, it was reassuring after so many people kind of were there to support you in the long run.
So what would you say was the most difficult part of coming out?
I think for me, the most difficult part might have been just at one point, I think during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I definitely felt like I lived a dual life. I had my military life and I had my life with my civilian life with my gay friends and in Seattle or New York, wherever it was. So I think just merging both of those lives into who I really was, into like just being kind of forgetting that there was that duality and just being able to just be David. So that was definitely an adjustment, I think, post Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Of course, yeah. Mark?
Yeah, so I attended the Air Force Academy from 2007, 2011. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was very much still so in effect. So I definitely hid that part of myself from everyone, including myself at some times. So it wasn't something that I really reflected on during that time period. And then when the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was repealed, although the policy was repealed, I think kind of the culture in the military, especially, or from my perspective in the Air Force, hadn't really changed. So I was very hesitant to come out at work and with my coworkers and my colleagues and things of that nature. So even after the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was repealed, I was still kind of living that double life. Kind of like David, I had, my civilian gay friends, and then I had, work colleagues and my professional Air Force life. And then I would say over the course of maybe my last 2 years during my assignment at Louisiana State University, I was able to fully integrate those two lives into one. And like David, just be Mark, and kind of bring my whole self to work. And I think that it's taken, although the policy had changed, it's taken some time for the actual culture of the military to kind of catch up to the policy.
So you and David both mentioned the duality of serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I've heard folks get 2 PO boxes and 2 cell phones and 2 social media accounts. Can you talk a bit more about what you did to preserve both your authentic self and the self that was allowed to serve in the military?
Yeah, so that's interesting that you say that about 2 PO boxes, 2 cell phones. I don't think I went to that extreme, but I definitely made sure that all my social media was completely, locked up. I didn't talk about what I did on the weekends with my colleagues and my coworkers, and I definitely kept my private life very, very private, to the extent that, I wouldn't hang out with, my fellow officers during the weekends, or I wouldn't do other things like go out with other people during the week. And so people would ask me what I would do on the weekends, and I would kind of brush it off, or, kind of hint at the fact that, I went out and stuff like that, but I wouldn't delve into any details about what I did with my coworkers. And I made sure just to keep those things very, very separate. And I made sure that my colleagues knew that that was something I was very intentional about. Like, don't ask me what I did on the weekend, because you probably don't, want to hear about it, and I don't want to talk about it. So that's how I kept those 2 kind of aspects of my life separate.
Okay, thank you very much. And Rhett, last but not least.
Yes, I went to the Air Force Academy from 2004 to 2008. So definitely there's a little bit of an underground network of, gays and lesbians at the time, because we couldn't, be open. And there's also the honor code, which was a little bit of a interesting thing, because it's, do not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. And then we have to lie every day. So that was a challenge, and definitely living in fear that you're going to get kicked out. But once you graduate, I still graduated in 2008, so had to live under Don't Ask, Don't Tell for several years after that. And same as, several other panelists have said, definitely didn't share a lot of what I was doing on weekends, who I was spending them with, and definitely affects your relationships with other officers or other people in the military, because you can't share your whole self. So once Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, I didn't just come out and tell everyone, but it definitely felt good eventually to be able to bring my partner to Christmas parties and just bring in my whole life to the military. But for the majority of my service, I was definitely not able to do that. So I have shared that experience with other people since then, because, when people don't feel comfortable at work, or, can't bring their whole selves to work, it's the same way that I think we all felt while serving in the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So definitely happy that that era is over. And I know that a lot of the academies now have pride clubs and have come a long way. So I think that's great. And I think it's going to become more and more of a non-issue as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. So this next question is very branch specific, and we seem to be have a lot of Air Force. So I'll start with David on this question. What motivated you to join the military, and why did you pick your branch of service?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I got to give a shout out to the Army football team, because they just beat Air Force last week, and so hopefully they're going on to beat Navy in December. But So I wasn't born in the U.S. I was born in Mexico, and I came here when I was 9 years old. And just growing up, I had no one in my family that went to the military or that served in the U.S. military. And then for me, 9/11 really had a significant influence in my decision to go into the military and serve. So that was a big thing at the time for me. It was definitely wanted to serve, wanted to give back, and like for me, West Point was a natural, was very much a natural match to what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to serve, I wanted to lead soldiers, and I wanted to be an engineer. So it all worked out at once.
That's great. Rob, what about you?
Yes, so I chose to serve in the Air Force. I grew up in the Springs. I grew up rooting for Air Force football. So that was a sad game this past weekend. And I would watch the Thunderbirds from as young as about age 4 or 5, and I knew that's what I wanted to do when I graduated high school from a very young age. So there's really no question in my mind when I turned 18 because I'd been around the Air Force and bled blue, if you will.
Of course. And Mark, can we round out with you?
Yeah, I actually have no prior exposure or experience with the military through even my family or friends. So a football recruiter actually came to my high school one day, and I had no idea what the service academies were, barely knew what the different branches were. And as the recruiter started talking to me, I started learning more. And the more I learned, the more I kind of fell in love with the thought of, going to this great school and serving my country and all that. And it was one of those things where once I learned like what the mission was and the opportunities I would have afterwards and the phenomenal education and Division I football opportunities that they had, like it was, I think for me, it just clicked and it was a perfect fit. So even though I didn't have any exposure beforehand, the more I learned about it, the more I really fell in love with it and ultimately decided to go to the Air Force Academy.
That's great. All right. What are you most proud of from your time in the military? Mark, let's start with you again.
I think I've had a very irregular, I would say, career in the military. I barely spent any time in my primary career field. I kind of made my Air Force career my own. And I think that if there's one thing that I'm most proud of, it's being an example for students or people who want to join, serve in the military, that don't look like the traditional officer or the traditional military candidate. I'm from LA. My parents and my family have no exposure or background to the military. I am African American. I'm LGBT. And so I think when you take all those things into account, it doesn't look like I would be someone who would be joining the military. But at the same time, I think that through my experience, hopefully I'm able to inspire other people who don't, see their selves represented within the military that much. So I hope that people who are in those underrepresented minority categories can see that anything is possible. And if you really want to do something, you should go ahead and strive and fight and work hard to do it.
That was awesome, and I can't only imagine that that inspiration extends to all of your colleagues at business school as well.
Yes,
Rhett,
hope.
Rhett, would you like to continue?
Sure. I guess what I'm most proud of from my time in the military was my deployment to Afghanistan, where, I'm not, on the front lines by any means. I'm there supporting, I was supporting Marines and Army soldiers who were going out every day. I was running a logistics contract for, to support their, food and shelter and airfield support. So just having a chance to go out there and support them and be a part of that was like a really rewarding experience. And I also had a chance to meet people from all over the world. I was on a NATO base in Kandahar, and then also on the Marine base, with soldiers from all over the world. So it was a really good experience for me, and probably my favorite experience for the military.
That's great. David, would you like to round us out?
Sure. Yeah, I think very similar to what Mark was saying, but additionally, I think for me, it's also leading soldiers in Afghanistan, and just the amount of growth that I've had with my first unit in the military. So initially, I guess we were talking about it earlier, being closeted, and now being out to all of them, actually, just being in like the growth in our relationship. So just the honor of leading such amazing people in the military was really one of the things that I would always take with me. So
awesome. So I know I personally hear from a lot of veterans that their time in service helped to prepare them for their next chapter in life. How would you say that your military careers prepared you for business school? Rhett, I'd love to start with your perspective.
Yeah, so I think time in the military really prepares you by just being able to deal with stress. Because a lot of things are put in perspective later on when things, business school may be stressful at times, but it's a lot different than some of the training we've gone through and the experiences that we've had. And then also just having a large amount of responsibility at a very young age when you come in as an officer or an enlisted. I think the amount of responsibility that we had from the time I was, 18, even like as a lieutenant coming on when I was 22, you're responsible for so much. Whereas I think in a normal situation, you would have to maybe wait a little longer for that responsibility. So I think those two things, and then just the overall professionalism of serving, I think that we bring a lot of that to the table.
Sure. What would you say has been the most stressful part of business school so far?
Probably recruiting, I think. Going through full-time recruiting for an internship. I actually was working full-time at the time as well and recruiting for a consulting internship.
Oh, wow.
So it was very just time-consuming on all fronts, and then just being able to juggle all of those things and try to manage your personal relationships. So time management and just dealing with the stress of, you're competing essentially for these roles. So just being able to put things in perspective and be like, it's going to work out no matter what, and not really letting it get you down if it doesn't work out, for one firm, move on to the next and so on.
Definitely. Rob, would you like to continue? Do we still have Rob? How about David?
yeah, I think definitely dealing with stress has been definitely one of those things in the military that you learn and really carries on to your experience in business school. But and a big thing I think is just like the relationship building, and for me it was a transition to that, just being able to build relationships, keep relationships, and work on them. That was very helpful from my time in the military. And lastly, just keeping things in perspective and being scrappy at the end of the day, to just going into situations that you don't always have all the answers to, but being able to be resourceful and reach out to your network and being able to work through things and that's definitely been very helpful. And as we, yeah, and this first, especially my first year right now, like so much going on at the same time, but just keeping things in perspective.
Certainly. What factors did you consider when you were applying to business schools, and why did you ultimately pick the one that you are currently attending? So Rhett, I'd love to start with you here.
Sure. So I was living in Houston, or I am living in Houston, working. So my first year I did the evening program, and decided that there was a lot more to offer from business school than staying with my current company. So the reason I chose Reyes was there was a couple other programs that offered, like UT comes down to Houston, and then A&M as well, were the other two I was looking at. But I think Reyes offered me the opportunity to get the full experience, because our whole second year is all electives, and we can take any of the classes that we want, essentially, with full-time. So, and then I also have access to all the recruiting and everything, which I ended up using. So that was the reason why I chose Reyes, was just the getting the full experience, and then also the program is a smaller program, so having that network that is a little more close-knit. Like, I know all of my classmates, and now I know all of the full-time and executives as well. So I think having that network that is actually a usable network is definitely something I consider.
That's awesome, yeah. And David, why did you why did you choose McCombs?
Yeah, McCombs, I visited all the programs that I applied to, and I knew I wanted to do a full-time program and be able to just immerse myself into that this 2 years. And it came down to McCombs for me, just being the culture really we have an extremely collaborative and very inclusive culture at McCombs, and I really felt that when I was here, the two visits that I did. So, and then just the classroom experience that I think that's offered here, really, to me, like, just spoke to like other places in the past where I've done well. And we have a small program. It's not a huge. It's 265 students. So have really gotten to know my classmates well. And lastly, for McCombs specifically, is just the flexibility in the core program or in the classes that we're allowed to take. We have a lot of flex core opportunities, and I really wanted to try to get as much out of the program and learn from the classes. So
that's great. And Mark, I apologize, I misspoke when I introduced you. Why did you choose Reyes and not Columbia?
I chose Columbia.
So we have it wrong on this slide. Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, that's my bad. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's all perfectly fine. For me, I looked at my kind of end goal, and I had that in mind. I knew I wanted to pivot into the financial services sector. So I looked at programs that had very strong accounting and finance and valuation programs. I also knew I wanted to be in New York City. I came to Columbia, visited. I felt like I really fit in with the culture here. And although maybe the blogs may not have this same sentiment, but I do believe that we have a very, very strong collaborative culture here, even though we are in New York City. We have and it's, I guess traditionally thought of as a very kind of cutthroat program, but I can tell you that that's definitely not been the case. Everyone here is very supportive and collaborative. We have a great culture, and it gives me the opportunity to be close to Wall Street, be close to the financial services sector, and learn as much as I can about finance and evaluation and accounting.
It's great. And that's a perfect segue into our final question for the panel. I know that we have several veterans that are considering applying to business school listening in right now, and will be watching the recorded session later. What single piece of advice or encouragement would you like to leave them with today? And we can start with Rhett for that.
Let's see. I would say don't take it too seriously. Just this is your time to be in a risk-free environment. So if you have something that you're curious about or you want to learn more about, like put yourself out there and go for it, because there's not a lot of opportunities later in life that you'll be able to completely rebrand and change your direction. So I would say definitely take a risk and go for it.
That's great. Mark?
I would say keep this in mind that these 2 years are a very transitionary period. If you're coming right off the military, it is a transition, and so kind of like Rhett was alluding to, take time to explore all the different opportunities, take time to learn as much as you can about business, and take time to kind of find your civilian self and work hard, explore all the opportunities, and achieve your dreams.
And David, how would you like to finish us off?
Yeah, I would like to just don't be afraid to reach out to people as you're in your journey and finding out the best program for you. I think any veteran that's transitioned from the military sympathizes strongly with the struggle maybe, or how it's a difficult transition. So just I think any veteran is more than willing and happy to help out, jump on the phone and talk to you. And so don't be afraid to reach out to that network and start developing a network, not only in the school that you want to go to, but all the schools that or even just the whole, within the whole MBA community. So just, yeah, get out there and put yourself out there and don't be afraid.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you all for joining us on this panel. It's been incredible to speak with you, and the insight and perspective that you bring is invaluable. Jordan, I think that brings us to the next part of the session. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. We actually wanted to hear a little bit about what you do with Outserve and kind of explaining what the organization does.
Yeah, of course. So I'll give a brief background of Outserve first. So Outserve SLDN is a nonpartisan, nonprofit legal services policy and advocacy organization. I know that's a lot of word soup. Basically, our mission is to provide free and direct legal aid and advocacy services to the LGBTQ military community. And to us, that includes service members, veterans, DoD civilians, and their families. So we're also a membership organization, and we provide fellowship and forums to our members through 80 chapters that have been established throughout the world. So basically, if there's a military base in the state, territory, or country, we have some incredible volunteers on the ground that are helping to raise awareness of our services and programming, and are really cultivating a safe and productive environment for all 75,000 of our active and contributing supporters. So Outserve SLDN is the progeny of a merger between two powerhouses. On one hand, we have the Service Members Legal Defense Network, or SLDN, which lives on through our legal and policy services today. It was created in 1993 in response to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So the organization essentially provided legal and advocacy services to service members under the law, and it was really instrumental in the law's ultimate repeal. Outserve, on the other hand, was founded in 2010 by a group of actively serving individuals to give a voice to those that were silently serving. Many of the panelists today were silently serving, and I recognize a few of the names from Outserve when it first began. The two organizations ultimately merged in 2012, combining the legal and policy work from SLDN and the membership and community organizing work of Outserve. We're also happy to announce we are in the process of merging with a third organization, the Military Partners and Families Coalition. So integrating MPFC's mission of providing advocacy and education support for LGBTQ military families is a perfect complement to a lot of the efforts that our staff has been doing the last several years, and will serve to further broaden and strengthen our collective knowledge and resources for both our membership and our So I work specifically with the legal and policy side of the organization, and between January and October of this year, our legal department received 300 unique compliance requests. So that's about one a day. The scope of services was pretty broad. It ranged from discharge upgrades and transgender name and gender marker changes to claims for veteran benefits and discrimination or harassment based on what we call seroconversion or HIV status, or perceived or actual sexual orientation and gender identity. One of the largest campaigns we have, and it's certainly my favorite, we have dubbed Restore Honor, Restore Dignity, and it focuses on updating the certificates of release or discharge from active duty, which is colloquially known as the DD-214, when those service members were discharged as a result of their sexual orientation or gender identity, whether that was actual or perceived. So the DD-214, for those that are unaware, contains a lot of information, and that information can actually affect a wide range of benefits and resources that a veteran can receive or be available. So through this program, we request a complete copy of the veteran's military records from the National Archives. We do a brief review to just make sure there's no circumstances that we know will bar them from a discharge upgrade. And then we craft a brief explaining to the boards of corrections of military naval records, which are some military tribunals that sit in the Pentagon. Basically saying why this veteran's discharge is unjustly characterized and how that unjust characterization affects access to benefits as a result. So our major concerns on the form are the characterization of service. So there's actually 7 characterizations: honorable, general, honored than honorable, dishonorable, bad conduct. Those are the most common. We look at the narrative reason for separation, which is literally a description of why the service member is separated. In these cases, it usually says homosexuality or homosexual admission. And then we look at the reentry code, which is a rating out of 4 that is used to assess the service member's ability to rejoin the military and whether or not they need a waiver or whether they'll be barred completely. Our ultimate goal is to have the characterization upgraded to honorable, have the narrative reasoning stripped of any mention of homosexuality or gender identity, and have the reentry code upgraded to a 1, which would indicate that there's no issue with the veteran rejoining the service. So a lot of the veterans that we work with have reached an age where they no longer desire or are able to join the military service, and they often ask me, why does this matter? So I'm currently working with veterans from the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and one from World War II. And I offered them all 2 reasons. First, these individuals served honorably, and but for a defunct discriminatory policy and ill-formed prejudices, their paperwork would correctly showcase that honorable service. And these veterans deserve to have their service characterized honorably. And second, the benefits and resources that a veteran can access are generally governed by 2 pieces of information on the DD-214, the time in service and the characterization of discharge. So if a veteran receives a dishonorable discharge, or even an other than honorable discharge, they are unable to get disability compensation, education benefits, a seeing eye dog or hearing aids, or even burial benefits. However, if it's characterized as honorable or under honorable conditions, they will be availed to those resources. So our goal is to make sure that these veterans get all of the benefits that their heterosexual counterparts do. So the next largest program we do is the trans name change, and it's pretty similar to the discharge upgrade. We submit a brief with corresponding documentation and argue that having the birth name on the DD-214 effectively outs the veteran, which is something that they should have control over. As you probably imagine, a lot of research and work goes into these cases. They can take months and years. And we're proud to partner with the American Bar Association on an education project to prepare attorneys that assist in these ventures. And we have 6 dedicated law firms and several law school clinics that have pledged their pro bono support. So shout out to all of them.
Well, Andy, it seems like you do a lot of great work, and the organization is definitely going to continue being needed for a long time. One of the questions that I have is, with the current change in administration, what do you see as like the biggest change in the services that the organization provides, and how do you see that continuing?
Certainly, yeah. We've gotten a lot of folks coming in for discharge upgrades and for transgender service, open trans service. So the rationale for the discharge upgrades is that they're afraid that the administration is going to somehow prevent them from being able to upgrade their discharge in the future. and they will never be able to access these benefits again. So they've been pushing this process. I'll get to it later. Well, now there might not be a later. And then in response to the president's July 26th tweets and his subsequent memo, Open Trans Service has certainly been a very big issue that we have been noticing. And I can talk a bit about Karnovski v. Trump if you'd like.
That would be great.
Sure. So, like I mentioned, the president released a string of tweets on July 26th and then a memo concerning a ban on open transgender service. And he basically cited that transgender individuals should not be allowed to serve in the military because they cost too much and they cause a disruption to unit cohesion. Fortunately, the president seemed to have forgotten about the 134,000 transgender veterans in the country and the 15,500 veterans that are currently serving. So the memo can basically be summarized into three specific points. There's a general policy and two specific directives. So the general policy basically says we're going to go back to the point in time before June 2016 when President Obama instructed his Defense Department to dismantle the ban on open service. And then the two directives focus on preventing trans troops from joining, or what we call the accession policy, and halt all defense and Homeland Security Department resources from funding any gender-affirming surgeries. So we had a lot of people contact us, and we were really upset. So we teamed up with Lambda Legal to file a lawsuit to challenge the constitutionality of any ban, and that lawsuit is called Karnovski v. Trump. So we are representing 6 actively serving military members, 3 individuals who are wishing to join the service, and 3 advocacy organizations, the Human Rights Campaign, the American Military Partner Association, and the Gender Justice League. So Ryan Karnovski, who's the named plaintiff, is a 22-year-old social worker in Washington and wants to become a military officer. We have Staff Sergeant Katie Schmidt, who's a career soldier in Washington, and she just submitted her application to become a warrant officer. And then we have Drew Lane, who is a 17-year-old high school student in Texas, and with his parents' support, he wants nothing more than to join the Air Force when he graduates this year. So we filed a lawsuit in August for declaratory and injunctive relief, essentially arguing that the president's policy was unconstitutional because it discriminated against transgender individuals regarding military. Our argument is rooted in the equal protection and due process claims under the 5th Amendment and the free speech claims under the 1st Amendment. I can go into those a bit if you'd like, or did you have another question?
I guess one of my other questions is what can civilians or people who are currently getting their MBAs do to kind of support the work that Outserve is doing, especially around the military ban?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I mentioned, we're a nonprofit, and all of the services that we provide are free to the client. So if you are able, please donate because it helps. All of our donations go directly to program services, and it helps us reach more people. If you're not able to donate, totally understandable. I know we're all students. There's a ton of opportunities for you to get involved with us on the ground, educating in the community, talking about why transgender individuals serving in the military is not an issue, why they don't cost a ton of money, why they don't break down unit cohesion. We have a ton of resources. Feel free to reach out to us, and we can engage in these conversations productively and hopefully some minds in the process.
Great, and I'll include links on how to get involved at the end of this webinar. So we've got about 15 or so minutes left. I wanted to open up to the attendees to see if there are any questions. If you can, please try to type in questions in the chat box or in the questions box if you have any. But other than that, one thing that I did want to address is the identity of being a veteran and where that comes into play in your MBA, and that goes out to all the panelists too. How does being a veteran kind of inform your MBA experience differently than being LGBT.
Was that for me or the panelists?
Oh,
I'm
sorry, that's for anyone to answer, any of the panelists or you, Andy.
I can go ahead and take this one. Mark Mosby here. I think for me, I was surprised at how many of my classmates had never had much interaction with the military or people that are in the military. And so I think from the past couple of months, I've gotten a lot of, questions about what it's like to serve, what I did in the military, even things as basic as what are the differences between the branches and things of that nature. So I think being a veteran, you're in a unique position to answer those questions that people who don't have much experience with the military kind of have. And so that's just one of the things that I've kind of seen over the past few months here at Columbia Business School.
That's great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm actually the only veteran at my lots or my business school that I know of. And being an enlisted soldier or sailor, which is arguably a bit different than the officers on our panel, I agree completely with Rhett. The amount of responsibility that we had at such a young age really translate into that business school experience. And I often find myself being a mentor of sorts to many of my business school colleagues, which has been great.
Great. David, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think at McCombs we definitely have a large presence of veterans, about 10% almost actually from our whole class. So there's definitely a lot of information. Like in general, we do have this every week we have MBA coffee chats, and I think that's been a great opportunity actually for to break down barriers, almost to be able to have a conversation about my experiences in either just like purely from the military standpoint, or maybe getting the military. We had a storytelling session a couple weeks ago, and got to talk a little bit about that. So I think it's been great. Just being able to be open and be able to share my experiences. I think people are have been very open to that here from me, and just the amount of support I think that we've gotten from also the faculty in general, or the program staff, the dean, everyone's so
great. All right, do we have any questions coming from the attendees for either the panelists or our moderator? All right, well, we have a few minutes left, and I will give those back to everyone, since I know that everyone's time is pretty precious and valuable. So I just wanted to leave everyone with a few pictures of everyone in their active service. And thank you again for your service and for your time today. To all the attendees, I'll be sending out a recording of this along with links for Outserve and ways to stay involved with our current military. Again, thank you all for being here. Enjoy your Veterans Day and have a good afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.